Have you ever wondered what it's like to kill a man?
Good evening, friends and enemies. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Exploring Evil Reloaded. We're back for 2026 and excited about continuing to bring you premium true crime content. I'm an armchair detective in a case of multiple arsons right now, and I could use your help. So look out for the Firebug episode dropping soon. Exploring Evil Reloaded will have guests like Frankie Cambo from the Lost Boys Hannibal podcast. Give me feedback and advice at exploringevil@gmail.com. I wanted to get a little wild tonight, so I'll be covering a mass murderer who went by the name General Butt Naked. Not as scary as, other nicknames like the Night Stalker or Zodiac Killer, but he was just as bad. Now let's explore some evil. All right, first, to get started, we are going to go over a little background on the first Liberian Civil War. Don't worry, no quizzes. This is just to give you an idea of kind of the environment that led to all this. The first Liberian Civil War was the first in a series of two civil wars within the West African nation of Liberia. It lasted from 1989 to 1997. President Samuel Doe had established a regime in 1980. Totalitarianism and corruption led to unpopularity and the withdrawal of support from the United States by the late 1980s. The National Patriotic Front of Liberia, or NPFL, led by Charles Taylor, invaded Liberia from the Ivory Coast to overthrow Doe in December 1989 and gained control over most of the country within a year. Doe was captured and executed by the Independent National Patriotic Front of Liberia, or INPFL, a splinter faction of the NPFL led by Prince Johnson in September 1990. The NPFL and INPFL fought each other for control of the capital city, Monrovia, and against the armed forces of Liberia and pro-Doe United Liberation Movement of Liberia for Democracy. This is what happens in some of these countries where it's just a constant firefight. And here we're talking about diamonds and gold in, one of the poorest countries in the world. So keep that in mind. Peace negotiations and foreign involvement led to a ceasefire in 1995, but fighting continued until a peace agreement between the main factions took place in August 1996. Taylor was elected president of Liberia following the 1997 Liberian general election and entered office in August of the same year. The first Liberian Civil War killed around 200,000 people and eventually led to the involvement of the Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS, and the United Nations. The peace lasted for 2 years until the Second Liberian Civil War broke out when anti-Taylor forces invaded Liberia from Guinea in April 1999. So let's talk a little bit about the United Liberation Movement of Liberia for Democracy. The ULIMO. You guys are keeping these straight, right? No? Yeah, I can't either. So that was formed in June 1991 by supporters of the late President Samuel K. Doe and former Armed Forces of Liberia fighters who had taken refuge in Guinea and Sierra Leone. It was led by Raleigh Seeki, a deputy minister of finance in the Doe government. After fighting alongside the Sierra Leonean army against the Revolutionary United Front, ULIMO forces entered western Liberia in September 1991. And guys, this isn't going to be super important to talk about the crimes, but you do need a background to see kind of the environment that this guy formed in. The group scored significant gains in areas held by another rebel group, the National Patriotic Front of Liberia, notably around the diamond mining areas of Lofa and Bomi counties. Surprise! From its outset, ULIMO was beset with internal divisions, and the group effectively broke into two separate militias in 1994. The ULIMOJ, an ethnic Kron faction led by General Roosevelt Johnson, and ULIMOK, a Mandingo-based faction led by Alhaji G.V. Kroma. The group was alleged to have committed serious violations of human rights both before and after its breakup. The aftermath. In 1997, the Liberian people elected Charles Taylor as the president after he entered the capital city, Monrovia, by force. Liberians had voted for Taylor in the hope that he would end the bloodshed. The bloodshed did slow considerably, but it didn't end. Violent events flared up regularly after the end of the war. Taylor was accused of backing guerrillas in neighboring countries and funneling diamond money into arms purchases for the rebel armies he supported and into luxuries for himself. No way. Seriously? Liberia was peaceful enough that refugees began to return, but other leaders were forced to leave the country, and some ULIMO forces reformed as the Liberians United for Reconciliation and Democracy. Man, we thought it was tough here with Republicans, Democrats, and, hopefully soon libertarians will be a big party too. But in any case, LURD began fighting in Lofa County with the aim of destabilizing the government and gaining control of the local diamond fields, leading to the Second Liberian Civil War. This is affecting the population of entire decades. The excess female population among those aged 46 or under is also due to young men and boys killed in the Civil War. And again, we're not talking about, 25 to 45-year-old men fighting about all this stuff. We're talking about 13-year-old kids, 12-year-old kids carrying around, AK-47s and stuff like that. This Liberian Civil War was one of Africa's bloodiest. From 1989 to 1996, it claimed the lives of more than 200,000 Liberians, as we mentioned earlier, and further displaced 1 million others into refugee camps in neighboring countries. Child soldiers were used throughout the war. Wow, America doesn't sound so bad anymore, does it? The Civil War claimed the lives of 1 out of every 17 people in the country, uprooted most of the rest, and destroyed a once viable economic infrastructure. The strife also spread to Liberia's neighbors. It helped slow democratization in West Africa at the beginning of the 1990s and destabilized a region that already was one of the world's most unsteady. Now that you have some background, we'll get butt naked after a quick break. Welcome back, friends and enemies. Let's talk about General Butt Naked. Joshua Milton Bly, born September 30th, 1971, was better known by his war name, General Butt Naked. He is a Liberian evangelical preacher, writer, and former warlord best known for his actions during the First Liberian Civil War. During the conflict, Bly led a group of soldiers which fought on the side of the rebel group United Liberation Movement of Liberia for Democracy, we'll call them ULIMO, before converting to Christianity and becoming a pastor in 1996. Born in the Liberian capital of Monrovia to a Kron family, Blai was handed by his father to several tribal elders who initiated him as a high priest in 1982 at the age of 11. After Armed Forces of Liberia officer Samuel K. Doe staged a coup d'etat against President William R. Tolbert in 1980, the new regime employed Blai to perform black magic rituals at the presidential palace in Monrovia to help him win the 1985 general election. In 1989, National Patriotic Front of Liberia rebel leader Charles Taylor launched a rebellion against Doe's regime, sparking a civil war. During the conflict, Blai and his men, a group of soldiers known as the Naked Base Commandos, fought without clothing and perpetrated numerous atrocities, including child sacrifice and cannibalism. Blai abandoned his life as a warlord and turned to preaching after undergoing a religious conversion in 1996, attributing these actions to receiving a vision from Jesus. In 2008, Blai testified at the Liberian Truth and Reconciliation Commission, claiming that his victims numbered at least 20,000 individuals. That's 10% of the total deaths in the war, if you don't like to do math. The public testimony brought mixed reactions and led to international attention, leading Blai to be featured in several documentaries. A little bit more about Blai. So we know that he was, at age 11, initiated into high priesthood in whatever black magic religion we're talking about now. And he noted in his memoirs that the role of high priest included overseeing human sacrifices. Could this be Palo Mayombe? Blai, like other Kron priests, would use visions to determine which individual would be sacrificed. After receiving the vision, Blai would, quote, give the victim's last name to its village elders, end quote, who would then lead a procession to the sacrifice victim's house, abducting and then sacrificing them atop an altar. After Blai stated an invocation, the victim would then be ritually dismembered. Blai also explained his support for Doe as being based on a sense of tribal loyalty, as they were both members of the same ethnic group. All right. So here's where things get bad. So don't listen to this part if you have kids in the car. It's going to be a trigger warning because there's some really awful things that we're going to talk about. We're going to kind of rehash a little bit, but this is where it gets really dark. In 1989, Charles Taylor, that rebel leader we talked about in the NPFL, launched a rebellion against Doe, which sparked that civil war. Blai became a member of the ULIMO and fought against the NPFL and rival militias, which came to control most of Liberia amidst the conflict. During the conflict, Blai became a warlord, as we said, leading a unit of several dozen combatants consisting primarily of child soldiers. The unit, including Blai himself, frequently had no clothes except for their shoes and magic charms, earning Blai the war name General Butt Naked. Blai claimed that this practice made him and his soldiers, quote, immune to bullets. During the conflict, Blai's forces perpetrated numerous atrocities, including cannibalism and human sacrifice. Blai would later claim that he had received a vision from the devil during the conflict. In the vision, the devil told him he would become a great warrior and should practice human sacrifice and cannibalism to increase his power. So this guy is a black magic practitioner, priest, whatever, and he's saying that he's communing with the devil. Well, wouldn't the devil be Christian? He exists within Christianity. So I don't know where GBN or General Butt Naked is going with this. And this is one of the worst things I've ever reported on. Sometimes go into the water where children were playing. General Butt Naked claimed that he would dive under the water, grab one, carry him under the water, and break his neck. He went on to say, sometimes I'd cause accidents, sometimes I'd just slaughter them. Wow. Bligh also made his soldiers consume psychoactive drugs in order to make them more alert and willing to follow Bligh's orders. He would later recall that whenever the Naked Base commandos captured a town, he, quote, had to make a sacrifice. They bring me a living child that I slaughter and take the heart out to eat it. The rival militias, including the Naked Base commandos, frequently fought with each other over control of Liberia's diamond fields and gold mines, and Bligh traded gold and diamonds with Mexican drug cartels for weapons and cocaine. On April 6, 1996, the NPFL launched an operation to arrest ULIMO rebel leader Roosevelt Johnson in the Monrovia region, leading to Bligh and other militias affiliated with Johnson to resist the attempt by force. The ensuing confrontation led to an intense firefight, ultimately resulted in the forced displacement of half of Monrovia's population. According to Damon Tabor of The New Yorker, during the firefight, a bystander reported seeing Bligh standing atop a truck, holding an assault rifle, which we know isn't a real thing, probably an AK, in one hand, and a man's severed genitals in the other. Wow, that's a lot to take in. Maybe we should just take a break and kind of let that settle. We'll tell you about the alleged religious conversion after a quick break. Welcome back, friends and enemies. Let's talk about General Butt Naked's religious conversion. In 1996, as the Civil War was drawing to a close, Bligh claimed that as he saw the blood of a child on his hands, he received a vision of Jesus Christ, who asked Bligh to stop being a slave. It's so nice that, Jesus identifies Bligh as the victim here. He's a slave and he's got to stop. I understand that there's other ways to look at this, and sometimes, Jesus, God, whatever religious figure you're communing with will speak in parables and will use terms to get you to end what you're doing as opposed to quoting the Bible or something like that. But it still displays to me that he is saying Jesus recognizes him as a victim and that Jesus tells him to stop being a slave. So these are decisions he made himself a lot. I'm not saying that he didn't have a messed up life, but I think that it is inherent within human DNA to know that murdering a child, especially as violently as they did, and eating human flesh is not okay. These are not things that people really need to be taught. These are inherent within our soul. After receiving the vision, Bligh eventually converted to Christianity and became an evangelical preacher, ministering to Liberian refugees in Ghana along with former combatants who had served under him during the conflict. From 2006 onward, Bligh also made several visits to Monrovia's slums in an effort to engage and assist former child soldiers who were living there, according to him. In 2008, Bly became the first Liberian warlord to testify before the Liberian Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was established by the legislature of Liberia after the conflicts to investigate reports of atrocities allegedly perpetrated during the First and Second Liberian Civil Wars. During his testimony, which was broadcast on live television in Liberia, Bly testified that he believed the number of murders committed by him and the naked base commandos to be at least 20,000. He was recommended for prosecutorial amnesty by the commission. That means he faced nothing. He was allowed to walk free after being responsible for 20,000 deaths, many of children, eating their flesh, pulling them underwater and snapping their necks, cutting men's genitals off, keeping children as soldiers and feeding them drugs to keep them under his control. Yeah, let's just let this guy walk free because, he converted. In Liberia, his testimony elicited mixed responses. Among the Liberian public, Bly was both publicly praised and criticized for his actions during the war. The testimony also led to Bly becoming front-page news among Liberian press outlets and several international journalists, including reporters from the Daily Mail and Vice Media, who traveled to Liberia to conduct interviews with him. In 2007, Bly established Journeys Against Violence, a non-governmental organization with the stated aim of helping former combatants and street children to reintegrate into society. Bly has publicly called for Liberia to establish a war crimes court to prosecute suspected war criminals, arguing that former warlords such as current Liberian Senator Prince Johnson should go on trial in order to, what General Butt Naked describes as, to account for their individual roles played and the actions of their respective troops which committed atrocities and war crimes during the Liberian civil conflicts. End quote. I wonder how he would feel if they said, well, no, now I've received a vision from Jesus and I shouldn't do this anymore. Should they be set free too? Sounds like the pot calling the kettle black. It's a man who murdered 20,000 people and is walking free, saying that everyone else should be held accountable, though. In an appearance on a Liberian talk show, Bly stated that he lives in regret almost every time, not just because of the people who he made childless, but children who he deprived of their parents. During his career as an evangelical preacher, Bly has attracted numerous benefactors from outside Liberia. If this is a conversion story, that's great. To me, it seems like just somebody trying to avoid paying for their crimes. Bly's notoriety and public testimony has led to numerous appearances in pop culture. We talked about Vice News, who went there to produce a documentary called The Vice Guide to Liberia. In the documentary, Bly conducted an interview with the journalist where he claimed that the planned withdrawal of the United Nations mission in Liberia in 2011 would lead to further violence breaking out in Liberia. The filmmakers also filmed Bly conducting a sermon in Monrovia in front of former child soldiers. In 2011, filmmakers Eric Strauss and Danielle Anastasion produced a documentary about Bly titled The Redemption of General Butt Naked, which was screened at the 2011 Sundance Film Festival. The documentary primarily focused on Bly's career as a ULIMO rebel leader and his life after converting to Christianity, documenting his efforts to both rehabilitate former military personnel under his command and reach out to the survivors of his atrocities to reconcile with them. Interspersed between these was footage of his 2008 war crimes testimony. A review by Kirk Honeycutt for The Hollywood Reporter praised the documentary for foregoing, quote, any personal judgments to let audiences draw their own conclusions, arguing that the filmmakers have caught lightning in a bottle. Another review in Screen International by David Darcy was also positive, describing the documentary as staggeringly cinematic and one of the best titles since John Waters' Pecker. The Book of Mormon, a 2011 satirical musical comedy written by screenwriters Trey Parker, Robert Lopez, and Matt Stone of South Park fame, features a character named General Butt Fucking Naked. The character is depicted in the musical as a Ugandan warlord, as he was originally modeled after infamous Lord's Resistance Army commander Joseph Kony. Parker noted in an interview with ComingSoon.net that warlords in Liberia have such colorful names, and we were reading about the one named General Butt Naked. We just ripped off his joke, basically. All right, final thoughts after a quick break. Welcome back, friends and enemies. I've got some questions for you to answer, and I really want to know what you think, because I want to kind of get some ideas on what you like to hear about, ideas on things that interest you, and I should be able to do that based on some of your answers to these questions. So hit me up at exploringevil@gmail.com. Was this an actual conversion to Christianity, or a way to try to avoid punishment for his crimes? I say avoid punishment, but, hopefully it was a real conversion. Here's the thing, though. Everyone finds religion in prison, whatever religion it is, and I can't imagine a Liberian prison is any fun. Criminals always look to place the blame elsewhere, and GBN is no different. It was everyone else. It was the warlords above him that, basically forced him to fight, which, if you just fought in the military, basically, okay, that's one thing. But when you take pleasure in dismembering and eating children, that's hard to come back from. So how many children can you kill and eat without having to go to prison or face the death penalty? I don't know. How many children can you kill and eat and still be welcomed into Christianity? I don't know. This is way different than ordering the bombing of a site. We talk about our presidents, all of them bombing all these places, killing so many people. That's a little bit different, because they're not necessarily taking pleasure. They're not targeting children. They're not targeting women. There are casualties from bombing that are unintended, but GBN loved to murder, and he coerced children into becoming murderers. Soldiers don't sneak up on little kids and break their necks. In the Vice documentary, the former child soldiers still look absolutely terrified of Bly. They won't even make eye contact. And finally, does nudity really make you bulletproof? Let me know what you think at exploringevil@gmail.com, or make a comment and I'll read it on the show. Exploring Evil is on Facebook as well. Make sure to subscribe so you'll be alerted when new episodes drop. Good evening, friends and enemies, and remember, the shadows were always closer than you thought.